We continue with reading 3, and I'd like to invite Hank Lander to read this reading by Andrew Raymer.
Our people came out of Egypt. Our people came out of Egypt, a mixed multitude. The spray of dividing waters, sparkling diamonds, all around them. We stood together at Sinai, all of us, future, present, past, amid the rumble of thunder and the crack of bright lightning, to enter into covenant with the one who loves us, in whose shining image we are all created over and over again. We've wandered bleak landscapes, built flimsy tents of skin and then houses of stone. We've planted orchards and vineyards, seen 2 temples rise and then go down in the surging flames, forcing us into exile. We've loved and lost, grieved and danced, transgressed and celebrated, hidden, suffered, thrived. And we gather here this day in the community of our people, a mixed multitude, and we sign out. Here, O Israel, we stand together, all of us, descendants of the single first human created on the 6th day, and of our myriad parents down through the generations, too numerous to name. We stand together, link arms, and pray. Blessed are you, Adonai, God of the universe, who sanctifies us with the commandments to love ourselves and one another in all our varied ways, and blesses us with a diamond bright radiance that still ripples out from your first spoken words of creation.
Thank you, Hank. Ahavat olam, Beit Yisrael, Ahamcha ahavta, Amcha ahavta. Torah u'mitzvot, Chukim u'mishpatim, Otanu limadta, Al kein Adonai Eloheinu v'shochbenu, Kumenu nasiach b'chukecha, V'nismach b'divrei Toratecha, U'v'mitzvotecha le'olam va'ed, Ki hem chayenu, V'orech yameinu, Uvahem nega yomam v'layla, Nega yomam v'layla, V'ahavatcha al tasir, Mimenu le'olamim, Baruch atah Adonai, Ohev amo Yisrael, Ohev amo Yisrael. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Please be seated. If you are standing. And Razi, if you could please read this V'ahavta by Bracha Yael. Along with, who is that?
This is Kyle.
Kyle, we welcome you. Shabbat Shalom.
Thrilled to be able to join us for services. Okay, V'ahavta by Bracha Yael. Hear, O Israel, just as God is one, so are we. Just as you shall love your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your might, so shall you love all people. Teach love, compassion, and understanding to your children when you sit in your home, while you walk on your way, when you retire, and when you arise. Bind these words as a sign upon your arm so that you may fight against prejudice, between your eyes so that you may not be blind to the suffering of others, and write them on the doorposts of your homes and gates so that you remind yourself and others that intolerance will not be tolerated within these walls.
Thank you. ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודיך, והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבביך, ושיננתם לבניך ודיברת בם, בשבתך בביתך ובלכתך בדרך ושוכבך ובקומך. וקשרתם לאות על ידיך, והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך, וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך, למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי, והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים, להיות לכם לאלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם. Adonai Elohechem Emet. Sandy Lewin, if you are there.
I'm here.
And by the
I'm
way,
here.
is Rabbi Camille Angel related to you?
Well, I just wanted to give a shout out.
Yeah?
She's my cousin, and I just wanted to say that my pride is quite overwhelming to have her part of our family and part of my community, and she is absolutely an amazing human.
Thank you.
And so I will quote her because she's way better to quote than me. Pride is defined in Webster's as a reasonable or justifiable self-respect. Pride in the form of self-respect and self-esteem has often been an elusive quality of life for multitudes of GLBT people. We have been the victims of misinformation and spiritual violence from time immemorial. After centuries of being made to feel ashamed by the scriptures and their commentators, a synagogue filled with Jews unafraid to be gay and lesbian, bisexual, transgendered, straight but not narrow, queer and questioning, wrestling and wholly honest, living with joy and enthusiasm, stands as a radical triumph. It is nothing short of miraculous, wondrous, supremely divine. Being your real self with honesty and enthusiasm is always a great triumph. But joining a community where the authenticity is palpable and magnetic, this is a gift whose worth is beyond measure.
Thank you. And thank you for reading it. Baruch atah Adonai Ga'al Yisrael. I'd like to welcome Holly to read reading 6 called Hope. You're on mute.
It's playing with it. Oh, now we have something right in the middle. I'm sorry. Okay. The only thing they have to look forward to is hope. And you have to give them hope. Hope for a better world, hope for a better tomorrow, hope for a better place to come to the pressures at home are too great. Hope that all will be all right. Without hope, not only the gay and non-binary, but the blacks, the seniors, the differently abled, the us's will give up. And if you help elect to the Central Committee and other offices more gay and non-binary people, that gives a green light to all who feel disenfranchised, a green light to move forward. It means hope to a nation that has given up. Because if a gay and non-binary person make it, the doors are open to everyone.
Thank you. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. ביני ובין בני ישראל אותי לעולם, אותי לעולם. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. כי ששת ימים עשה אדוני את השמיים ואת הארץ, ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. וביום השביעי שבת וינפש, שבת וינפש, שבת וינפש. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. So my friends, we now enter the tefillah, the main prayer of the service. I'd like you to, if you're able to stand, please do. If you're not able to stand this evening, lift your heart. We just take a few moments understanding this prayer. This is supposed to be a very personal prayer where we ask that what comes out of our hearts connects with our authentic self and with God. And then the next prayer reminds us of connecting with that, with the ancestors that came before us. And the third part about the strength of the universe and connecting with that power. Adonai sifatai tiftach ufi agita hilatecha. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu v'Elohei Avotenu v'Imotenu, Elohei Avraham, Elohei Yitzchak, v'Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, Elohei Leah, Ha'el Hagadol Hagibur v'Hanura, El Elyon, Gomel Chasadim Tovim, וקונה הכל, וזוכר חסדי אבות ואימהות, ומביא גאולה לבני בניהם, למען שמו באהבם, מלך עוזר ומושיע ומגן. ברוך אתה אדוני, מגן אברהם ועזרת שרה. אתה גיבור לעולם אדוני, מחיה מתים אתה רב להושיע, מוריד הטל. מחכל חיים בחסד, מחיי מתים ברחמים רבים, סומך נופלים ורופא חולים, ומתיר אסורים, ומקיים אמונתו לשני עפר. מי כמוך בגבורות, ומדומה לך, מלך ממית ומחיה ומצמיח ישועה, ונאמן אתה לחיות מתים. ברוך אתה אדוני מחיי המתים. אתה קדוש ושמך קדוש, וקדושים בכל יום יעלוך סלה. ברוך אתה אדוני האל הקדוש. Just take a moment right now before the reading, just to close your eyes for a moment if you wish, and just open your heart to whatever is there. There's so much to be grateful for. We gather our blessings, the things we might take for granted, the silly little things that make life work. We just take a moment to gather in a bouquet into our heart of our thank yous. Okay. Reading 7. Robin, would you please read this reading by Rabbi Lisa Edwards?
Let every soul that breathes praise you. In the days before Stonewall, many Jews were among those who felt the fear of homophobia and biphobia, who suffered from misunderstanding and rejection by family and Jewish community. But you, creator of us all, stood firm, reminding us what happened on the sixth day of creation. Vayivra Elohim et ha'adam b'tzalmo b'tzelem Elohim bara oto zakar unikeva bara otam. And God created the human in God's image. In the image of God was it created, male and female. God created he them. Until many came to understand that you do not create in vain, do not create without intent, until many of us came to understand that we too are a part of your design, loved equally by you. And the more we have learned and understood, the more has pride returned to our spirit, and the more our spirits have returned to you. We pray for the day when Kol HaNeshama Tahalel Yah, when all spirits, every soul that breathes, that shall praise you and admire your diverse creations.
I did it. Now I'm back. Thank you. I unmuted myself. Prayer Flights by Mark J. Link. In the stillness is the dancing. He writes, once someone accepted me with my somewhat long nose and skinny features. Someone accepted the way I speak, the way I act in public, and the way I really am. Because I was accepted, I can see more clearly who I am and accept myself without reservation. I no longer want to be another. I am myself, simply and surely. Love has finally been defined for me, the person I really am and always was, and I am not troubled or ashamed by this definition. Please, God, never let me despair, because I am who I am. Hinei matovu manayim, shaverachim gam yachad, tovu manayim shavet achim gam yachad hine ma tovu manayim shavet achim gam yachad hine ma tovu manayim shavet achim gam yachad hinei ma tovu manayim shavet achim gam yachad hinei ma tovu manayim shavet achim gam yachad. So we enter into Misha Berach, and my sweet little dog is entering into Misha Berach with us, into the glorious colors of this star-studded rainbow. And for Misha Berach tonight, I was hoping that we might be able to share together who it is that we're praying for by being on gallery. And that if anyone has a name they'd like to say, if they would unmute themselves and say those that they're praying for, so that we can really be doing this together. If it feels too confusing to do it that way, then you can put the names into the chat, but if we could try.
Meredith Rosenberg.
Tony Maynard and Stanley Carter.
John Schneider.
Heck to it.
Jeff Lewin and Vicky Myrtle.
Larry Vavra.
My cousin Ed Solomon.
Harry Herman.
Lindsay Hansen. My niece.
Robin Gillette.
Jill Shapiro's Lake.
Or Cheryl Powell.
Marilyn Stoffel and Mike Coffey.
Misha Beirach Avotenu Mekor Avraham Laimotenu. May the source of strength, who bless the ones before us, help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say Amen. Misha Beirach Imotenu Mekor habracha Lavotenu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say, Amen. So this evening, we are just blessed that you're all here to share in this very, very special Shabbat. And I'm going to ask Bob Bennett, who is president of our congregation and a dear friend, to read this teaching before entering into conversation with Derek and with Seven. So, Bob, and we can just focus on that. Thank you.
When one refers to another's sexual identity, one refers to a person's assignment at birth as biologically male, female, or intersex. A person's gender identity is their understanding of what genders to which they belong or identify. This is each person's unique knowing or feeling and is separate from a person's physical body or appearance, although often related. Androgynous, a person who has both male and female sexual characteristics. The term occurs 149 times in Mishnah and Talmud and 350 times in classical Midrash and Jewish law codes. Another class of gender was known as a tumtum. A tumtum was a person with indeterminate or obscured sexual characteristics. This type of gender is referenced 181 times in Mishnah and Talmud and 335 times in classical Midrash and Jewish law codes. Again, the occurrence of reference is significant. A lesser known category was Ilonit, a person who is identified as female at birth but develops male characteristics at puberty and is infertile. And finally, Saris, more commonly known as a eunuch, is a person who is identified as male at birth but develops female characteristics at puberty or later, whether naturally or through human intervention. The word eunuch, for example, is not obscure. Rather, it appears in Megillat Esther, the Scroll of Esther, read on Purim, sourced from the Keshet Program Bank. Thank you. I would ask Roy if he could highlight the three of us, Derek and Seven and myself.
Roy, can you get rid of the welcome Devar Torah part?
Yeah, just do the spotlight.
Yeah, there you go. Thank you.
Maybe, and then try to, let's see if I can change my view to speaker. Okay, if you put it on speaker at the top right-hand corner, you'll see Seven and Derek and myself. So I'd like to just introduce us by name to start. And my name is Bob Bennett, and I go by the pronouns he, him, his. Derek?
Hi, I'm Derek. I use he, him. My name is Seven. I also go by he, him, his pronouns.
Thank you. Okay. In honor of Pride Month, we want to be supportive of people promoting and living in the transgender movement. However, many of us find the terms and definitions being used very confusing. Most of us grew up understanding gender and sex as referring to female and male. Some of us were active in the lesbian and gay rights movements and marriage equality movements, and we're familiar with those struggles. But the current conversations about gender-neutral pronouns, initials like LGBTQA, and discussions about there being more than one gender is very new and to many of us very confusing. So we appreciate your willingness, Derek and Seven, to share with us your personal stories tonight to help us start understanding the complexity of gender identity issues. Derek and Seven are going to be staying afterwards if you'd like to talk with them after the service, and they're open to any of the questions you might have. They always remind us that there are no wrong questions, but they really want to share their experiences and help people understand where they're coming from. So please write down any questions that come up for you while they're talking and be ready to share those afterwards. To start the conversation, I'd like to ask Derek and Seven to share with us your personal journey with gender, how your understanding for yourself has changed over your life, and how you've come to have your current gender identity and where you found support in your journey.
Hi. Yeah, like you said, I'm happy to answer any questions that you have. Like, there are no wrong, inappropriate questions. Like, that's what we're here for. We're here so you don't call some random person on the street. Yeah, ask us anything. Yeah. I'd say it's way more appropriate to ask somebody who's volunteered and said, "Hey, it's okay to ask us any questions you want." Like, that's what this space is for. So I'm just gonna talk a little bit about how I came to identify how I do. I realized that I was transgender when I was about 14 or 15. I was after puberty, and I had understood some of the feelings that I had to not be normal, but I couldn't really identify what those feelings were because I didn't have the language for it. Um, and when I came to be about 14 or 15, there was a very steep difference in how I could understand myself. It went the direction to what you would think. Feminine, I identifying more feminine. I would just tried really hard to be a woman because I thought that would make my life easier, and it turned out it doesn't work that way. Um, and so then when I was 18, I started going on hormones that basically changes your whole. It changes your face, how your musculature, your fat is distributed on your body, changes your voice. It changes just about everything about your body, and you start following the genetic pattern of your father, basically.
I realized that I was trans when I was like 16. I have a medical condition called polycystic ovarian syndrome, which one of the symptoms gives you it for people who are born female. You have excess testosterone in your body. So I thought that maybe that was why I was feeling like I was. Um, but it's not. And when I was 18, I also went on testosterone. And you know, my family didn't really take it that well. Like when I told my mom, she yelled at me, and then I didn't talk to my family for a couple months. And I used to talk to my mom every day. Not we're on better terms now, but I also had the same thing where I was hyper feminine, and I was like, oh, I'm gonna get great at doing my makeup. I'm gonna grow my hair down to my back, and I'm only gonna wear dresses and stuff. Then I realized it doesn't really matter.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that also just goes to show that gender identity is very fluid. Like somebody who very much feels masculine can still present as being feminine to, cover something up or, yeah.
So most of us grew up thinking of sex and gender in terms of male and female, so we're confused by terms like non-binary, gender non-conforming, bisexual, trans, and queer. And a current activist has said that we're born with a body that the culture calls male or female, but no one is born a boy or a girl, a man or a woman. I'd like for you to comment on that and how that's been for you and your life.
So I actually did a little bit of research to find the actual statistics, but I think it's very interesting that while the categories of like being born male or female, it's what most people tend to think. Being intersex is actually very common. About 1 to 2% of everybody is actually intersex, and many people don't know that they are. But those categories of male and female are a lot more blurry than I think a lot of people realize. There's actually 77 million intersex people estimated on the planet right now, so it's not rare at all. Um, yeah, so I mean, male and female are, I guess you could say, body categories, but the actual expression of gender is separate from that. You can, I mean, there's so many ways to show that show your gender. I mean, you can show your gender by how you dress and how you move about through the world. But I mean, gender can also just be a feeling of identifying, seeing people out in the world and thinking that's me, that's who I want to be, that's who I want people to see me as. Yeah.
It's also important to recognize that it's it's only in it's newer to have like gender roles. Like historically speaking, there are so many different cultures that have, outside of the male or female binary, genders just in their everyday communities, and it's totally normal. Um, and it's an uncomfortable conversation to have, but the concept of gender roles and the binary of male or female was introduced by white colonizers. Because, and the communities that typically have more than just male or female gender identities and respect them are often communities of color. And a final note for that question is, there was a study where they did brain scans of cisgender people, so people whose gender identity is the same as their sex that they were born as, and also took brain scans of trans people, and they found that because male and female brains are different, they found that if you were born female and you transitioned to male, your brain was made up the same way that somebody born male has, and the same for trans women. Their brain was also structured the same way of cis women.
I think just like one final thing. I think a lot of people kind of get hung up on, okay, well, if these are just social categories, why do you need to transition to be another gender? Like, I think some people say that, like, oh, if it doesn't mean anything to be male, then why do you feel the need to transition? I think it has to do with a lot about how you wish to be perceived. Like for me, I feel very uncomfortable with the idea of people perceiving me as female. And to me, that's like what my gender is. My gender is what people address me as, what people see me as, what category people on the street put me in. To me, that's what makes the difference, is not like what my body looks like, or even what hormones I take, but more of the social category that I'm generally seen in.
One of the things I've noticed is that in online publications, or when I used to go to plays and movies, in the playbill, they'd often list the actress and actor and put the pronouns after their name. And I see that a lot now with the university when they're talking about professors. And I just wonder, how helpful is that to the movement? Or is it something that you would wish more of us would do?
It's really helpful and beneficial because it makes it to where it's normal to talk about your pronouns, and it can really mark down who is quote unquote like safe to talk about that with, because often the people that get so caught up over it, and this is just a generalization from my experience. The people who are so caught up and angry about it are typically the people who aren't okay with trans people.
Yeah.
And so, you know, if somebody is making a big fuss over pronouns and, oh, they don't even matter and all this stuff, you typically don't want to come out to them.
Yeah. I think it does, like, generally, I feel like kind of marks somebody as an ally. Like, I see somebody let me know their pronouns, like, oh, okay. So you're fine with me, you know, I can be comfortable with you, I can be open with you. I think another good part of that is I think of the people who are questioning their gender and they're not really sure where they stand. Like, in my community college, I led an LGBT group, and there was a woman there who, you know, she looked completely male. You know, she kind of had a beard. The way that she moved through the world, people would think that she was male. And she was very shy about it because she wasn't out to her parents. She wasn't out to pretty much anyone but us. But when we went around the table and we all started saying what our pronouns were, she said, I go by she, her. And that was like the first time that she was able to say that, because it's not a question that's usually asked. And it was kind of like a coming out moment for her of, oh, wow, like you guys are going to, you know, A, be okay with this, but B, here's an actual opportunity I have to express myself in this way.
It's also a good way to really check your judgment and your biases. Everybody has that. Even we do. Like, we can see somebody and assume, like, that's a guy.
Yeah, right.
We're wrong sometimes.
Yeah.
And it's okay. It's just it depends on what you do with that. If you say, okay, I acknowledge that I was wrong, and you can grow from it, or you can just stay in a harmful place.
Yeah, I know. I think you're totally right. I think it definitely challenges our judgments of people. Like, I think it's definitely okay to assume what somebody's pronouns are, because, I mean, you have to. That's just I feel like it's a little impractical to ask every single person, but I think it just shines a light on, you don't always know what somebody's pronoun is going to be, because sometimes people will surprise you.
Okay, I appreciate that. Since we're part of a worship service tonight, one of the things that we talked about, the three of us, was how's your spirituality and Judaism been important in your life journey and in coming to express who you are as a person and as your gender identity? And is there anything in particular about spirituality or Judaism that's either been a barrier or a support for your journey?
Honestly, the last slide that we were just on, that explains a lot. Just that Judaism is historically, like, it has roots outside of the male and female binary, that there are words for people like us. I think that's, like, very empowering. And even though there are some people in the world who are Jewish who don't share the same beliefs, it's very grounding to know that in the literature, like, there's precedent for us, that we exist and as people. Yeah.
And I didn't know that I was Jewish until I was 15. I was raised secular, and when I was looking into other religions and cultures, I didn't want to be in a place that didn't accept me. But it's in our books, it's in our scriptures, it's everywhere. So just having a place that, and like a culture and a religion and community that just accepts you, is fantastic.
Yeah, and even like Social Action Shabbat, this right now is it's very heartening to see. It's very it makes me feel accepted, and like I can be who I am and not have to hide that part of me.
Thank you. And one last one, then we can open it up. Susan Stryker, who's an activist, has written an interesting sentence. She said that she hopes the typical reaction for most of us when we encounter someone who's a person expressing their gender differently would be an experience of wonder, delight, attraction, curiosity. But unfortunately, she says that often people manifest it as panic, disgust, contempt, hatred, or outrage. I just wonder, what's been your experience with people coming to know you and your sexual and gender identities, and how have you dealt with both the love and the support and the outrage and the disgust?
Hmm. Okay. Yeah. He's grabbing my laptop charger because we got the notification that our laptop's starting to die. Um I mean, we've had both. I've noticed that people we know tend to be the most supportive. And that the reaction from strangers, I feel like a lot of time is to stare. Um I mean, if we are presenting our gender in a way that doesn't seem totally, you know, like we are not trans, if we show any signs of us being trans, like for example, if I'm, wearing something that shows my scars a little bit, or we're swimming or anything like that, we do get a lot of stares and judgment. But for the most part, people that I talk to tend to be really supportive. I don't get a lot of hate if I actually feel comfortable enough to come out to someone, but probably because I don't really come out to people who don't seem like they're going to be cool about it.
I I my loved ones and my friends and my community are all super super supportive. With my family, it was a rocky start, very very hard start. But they came around, and it's usually strangers again that give us just so much problems with it. Like personally, I've had safety issues arise. Like I've had knives pulled out on me. I've had obscenities like shouted at me, and it's terrible. But overall, I would say that my experience has been a positive one. But I do really want to make note that just because our experience has been positive, it's not positive for everybody.
Yeah, we live in California.
We live in
Yeah.
California. We live in Sacramento. But especially Black and brown trans women of color, they're dying every single day. And I don't want our experiences being positive to overshadow that and how serious it is.
Oh yeah, yeah, for sure. I don't want to overshadow that, but I have noticed that a lot of people's reaction isn't so much about being transgender, because it doesn't come up as often as you might think. But I feel like a lot of the reaction has to do with people seeing us and noticing the more subtle ways that we are like breaking gender norms. Like people seeing me as like a short, feminine man, I feel like it gets more negative attention in the way that people will assume that. Well, I mean, the most hate that I get is people saying homophobic slurs at one or both of us, just kind of assuming, oh, you are a man, but you are more feminine than I would like you to be. So
Yeah. Like
that's not okay.
we've both had similar experiences. He's been on testosterone a whole year longer than I have.
Mhm.
I have a full beard. I am 5'8".
Yeah.
Testosterone, because I started it at an age where I had puberty late. I actually got taller.
Yeah.
And like it made my shoulders broader and everything. So people usually don't give me that rudeness anymore because I'm kind of intimidating. But we present so differently. Like I
Yeah.
shop in the women's section because it fits my body better and the clothes are cuter. But and Seven, is more masculine presenting, but they'll still give him issues
know.
about it.
We kind of joke about a little bit that Derek can wear a woman's blouse and show up doing whatever he wants, but like my hair's a quarter of an inch too long, or my shirt's a little bit too V-necked, and people call me she. We just yeah.
Well, I really appreciate your openness and your willingness to share with your community here. We do have a few minutes, so I'd like to just ask if there are one or two people who have had questions pop up that we can ask in front of the whole group. Otherwise, we'll wait until the ONEG. But let's see, Roy, maybe go to a whole screen where we can see if anybody raises their hand and has a question.
Carol has a question.
Okay.
I've been wanting to ask Seven this for such a long time. Seven, did you pick your name?
Yeah, sort of. So actually, my father picked out the name, and it was the name that he wanted to give me if I had been born male. And so I had that kind of hanging over my head for so long of like, that's the coolest that's the coolest name I can imagine. Like I wish I had that name. So when it came to change my name, I was like a really obvious choice.
Derek, did you choose your name? It's less unusual, but
Yeah, I did. I had a list. My mom has all of her kids' initials tattooed on her, and I woke her up in the
Yeah.
middle of the night and I was like, "Hey, I need you to tell me what you think about these names." And I had this whole list of names that started with D and the middle initials were A. And she'd be like, "Ah, I don't like that one. Like that one sounds just very stuck up." And
Yeah.
then she was like, "Derek, I like that one." And then she went back to sleep, and that's how I chose it.
Great questions. Thank you. Other people I can't see, so you may have to just.
I have a question for Derek and Seven. Hi guys, so great to see you. We miss you. If there are a couple of things that you think all of us could work on to be better allies and better partners to your community, what would those things be?
I think the biggest help for me would be, I know that before I said you kind of have to assume people's pronouns, but if it's possible to avoid calling someone like ma'am or mister if you're not quite sure what their gender is, I think that would be a really big help, because I've been out with other transgender people who maybe don't, we call it, it's not a great term, but we call it passing as the gender that you want to be. Like somebody that doesn't look as much like the gender that they want to present as. It can be hard for them to have somebody be like, you know, constantly calling them sir, 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 he. You know, it can kind of, you know, if they really want to be seen as a woman, it can be disheartening. So I'd say if you can avoid it, it might be make you a little bit of a better ally to just try.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know a lot of people say like Mr., Miss, Ma'am, Sir, all that. But for trans people, it can be really hard. Just to hear like, "Oh, Miss, you forgot this," and it's like, well, now I feel like my whole day is ruined.
Yeah, because it's like, well, what am I doing wrong?
Um,
What about my appearance do I need to change to make
Yeah.
these people think that I'm the gender that I want to be?
And
Yeah.
also especially for like our non-binary friends,
Yeah.
having genderless spaces like bathrooms,
Yeah.
or like there was an issue when we were still attending services in person where in the men's restroom there wasn't a trash can. However, people born female menstruate, and say that you're a trans guy like us, what do you do with your stuff?
Yeah.
Then you have to like go to some random trash can in a hallway,
Hold it in your
hold
hand.
it,
Yeah.
you know, things like
Yeah.
that people don't think about that are really uncomfortable. And, you know, they're uncomfortable to talk about, and to approach someone and say, "Hey, this is what I need." It can be super uncomfortable for people who aren't confrontational, who aren't confident. So just already providing things like that can make somebody's day.
Hmm. Yeah, and this one's like a little bit more of a difficult one because it kind of requires thinking about it all the time. But if you can, kind of being a little bit more mindful of speech or something that I at least try to do, of like thinking before I say generally like men or women do this, kind of think, well, does that mean all women or just, you know, cis women? Like the cis person is somebody who's not trans. So like if we're talking about how, you know, how hard it is for women to be pregnant, and if you're just saying like women, 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 you know, it can kind of, it's helpful to sort of take a step back and think, okay, well, you know, who else can be pregnant? When I say women, do I just mean women who aren't trans? Am I including, under the category of women, am I including men who can get pregnant? I think just kind of being a little bit mindful of language can really mean a lot to trans people who might be listening. Yeah.
I really appreciate the language caution. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Yeah. One more question. If anybody wants to unmute and ask.
Nervous, we like to talk about ourselves.
Yeah.
No, we appreciate your openness and willingness to talk about things that we don't even think about, the restrooms and things like that at the synagogue. So, all of this is part of our growing experience. Again, I'll just go to gallery view to see. Anyone else have a question they want to ask? Their hand. Rabbi. Oh, no, I'm sorry, Danielle.
Yeah. Hi, guys. I have a quick question. And this is only because I've been, seeing a lot of this since last month. How does the LGBTQ plus community accept Jews who are transgender, gay, binary, all of that? Are you guys finding issues with the intersectionality being Jewish and trans, or are you still finding that you're still accepted in those communities?
Yeah, that's a really great question. I mean, again, maybe it has to do with location, but I haven't had issues so far. I don't know if you have.
Personally, I haven't really had issues, but I do know people who have. Within there, so in the LGBT community, we categorize there's gay culture, which is usually cisgender white gay men, and then there's queer culture, which is everybody else.
Yeah.
And the first one tends to be a little bit judgmental and closed off. So that's typically the community that gets a little weird about intersectionality and tends to exclude trans men. But the bigger community, the true queer community, they don't really give us any issues.
Yeah, I'd say if there's any sort of bias, I think people maybe lump Judaism in with Christianity a little bit and kind of assume that because I'm Jewish, I might have the same ideas as somebody who's Christian, or they might assume like, oh, does your family accept you?
Oh yeah, like
Yeah, I would say if there's any sort of bias, it more of comes from that. And there's probably not a huge like emphasis on that intersexuality. I haven't seen a whole lot of people really talking about what it means to be Jewish and LGBTQ. But that's a really good question. Yeah.
Hey, well, we have a lot to continue to have a conversation about, and we want to have a symposium sometime, if not this summer, early in the fall, when we can really bring people like yourselves and others that are knowledgeable to help us talk about this. Although I do know, for everybody's knowledge, we're unfortunately losing Derek because he's been accepted to the Culinary Institute in New York. And so he's going to be going back starting in September. So mazel tov, Derek.
next year though. Still have me for a whole nother year.
Oh, okay. Well, that's great news. I didn't realize that. Okay. Thank you both, and we'll still have after the services to see if anybody wants to talk. Okay. So back to Rabbi Nancy, please.
Yeah. Thank you for the opportunity to speak.
So, love you very, very much. Thank you so much for just sharing with us and your patience with us and your willingness to help us be who we really want to be, right? We want to be a place where all of us feel like we can be our authentic selves. And your sense of being fully accepted makes all of us feel more accepted of ourselves. So thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. We'll talk more. And by the way, I miss you very much. And it's so good to see you. Right now, we're going to move towards some announcements. And I was going to ask Robin Gillette if she would share with us what's up. Robin Gillette.
Hi.
Hi.
Tomorrow morning, we have Torah study at 9 a.m. And don't forget to put on your calendars October 24th. And we need your help as always because it's all of us together. And Manny Orange's bar mitzvah is on the 26th. And make sure you get your dues in so that The anonymous donor can match any of them paid by June 30th, and a special board meeting on the 13th at 7.
Thank you very much. Yeah, the special meeting is called, the topic is Teruma, Giving from the Heart, a membership model that we are contemplating very seriously for our community. It's exciting and one that we really want to learn together about it. So if you can please come on the 13th. And I think that Carol sent out some information. So there's just a few articles, if you could read them so that when we get together, we can really talk about that and make some good decisions about our future.
Rabbi, we have one more announcement from Hank.
Okay.
our
Yeah,
secretary.
Hank, what's
Yeah.
up?
Well, it just came in this afternoon. You know, they say news at 11. You don't have to wait till 11 o'clock tonight to find out. But this past Sunday, we had our annual meeting. And like anything, sometimes when it comes to voting, it takes a couple extra days or a week for all the votes to be counted. And that happened at Beth here at Congregation Beth Shalom. But this today we wrapped up all the voting, and both the nominated, the slate of nominees, as well as the budget, have been approved for the congregation going ahead. So certainly I want to thank all the leaders that are leaving the board and the like, but man, we've got a bunch coming on, and those folks, we're looking forward to their leadership this coming year. So thank you for letting me share that with the congregation.
That's great news. I think we're going to move toward our last two prayers, Aleinu followed by Kaddish and closing song. And so if you're able, please stand for Aleinu. Aleinu l'shabeach ladon hakol latit gdula liotze bereshit shelo asanu kiguye haratzot v'lo samanu kimishpachot adama shelo samchokenu kahem v'gor aleinu kechol hamonam ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא שהוא נוטה שמיים ויוסר הארץ ומושב יקרה בשמיים ממעל ושכינתו זו בגופי מרומים הוא אלוהינו אין עוד Makenu efesulato, kakatu v'torato v'yadata hayom v'hashivota elevavecha ki Adonai hu Elohim b'shamayim mima'al ve'al haaretz me'al haaretz mitachat einod v'ne'emar v'haya Adonai למלך על כל הארץ ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד ושמו אחד. As we prepare for Kaddish, we offer this prayer of remembrance. Oh God, remember today our LGBTQIA siblings who were martyred in years past, those murdered by fanatics in the Middle Ages, those who perished in the Holocaust, those struck down in our own city in our own time. Remember also those who took their own lives, driven by despair by a world that hated them because of their love or gender. And in mercy, remember those who lived lives of loneliness, repressing their true natures and refraining from sharing their love with one another. Oh God, remember the sacrifice of these martyrs and help us bring an end to hate and oppression of every kind. And my friends, tonight we are also standing in knowledge that tomorrow is Juneteenth. And so a prayer in remembrance of Juneteenth. Juneteenth is now an established holiday celebrated on the 19th of June to commemorate the emancipation of enslaved people in the United States. The holiday was first celebrated in Texas, where on that date in 1865, in the aftermath of the Civil War, Slaves were declared free under the terms of the 1862 Emancipation Proclamation. Kaddish for Black Lives. Creator of life, source of compassion. Your breath remains the source of our spirit, even as too many of us cry out that we cannot breathe. Lovingly created in your image, the color of our bodies has imperiled our lives. Black lives are commodified yet devalued, imitated but feared, exhibited but not seen. Black lives have been pursued by hatred, abandoned by indifference, and betrayed by complacency. Black lives have been lost to the violence of the vigilante, the cruelty of the marketplace, and the silence of the comfortable. We understand that Black lives are sacred, inherently valuable, and irreplaceable. We know that to oppress the body of the human is to break the heart of the divine. We yearn for the day when the bent will stand straight. We pray that the hearts of our country will soften to the pain endured for centuries. We will do all we must do to bind up the wounds, to heal the shattered hearts, to break the yoke of oppression. As the beauty of the heavens is revealed to each of us each day, may each day reveal to us the beauty of our common humanity. And together we say, Amen. On this Shabbat, we remember those who have died recently into the first 11 months. And while not on the sheet, I want to say the name of Charlie Hilty, cousin of Bill Roselle. Murray Fink, Maria Pellegrino Eisner, Sheila Sugarman, Nancy Norton Fleischman, Raul Saavedra, Leroy Davis, Sarah Everard, Christine Verano, Ann Kilcrease, Gloria Dottie, Susan Blum, Jerome Marvin Hyman, Ivan Krakowski, Michael Salmon, Frank Ketchel, Patrick Ashley, Alfredo Laniado, Beatrice Masad, Dean Myrtle, Alberto Arab Cohen, Kathy Klein, Samuel Alberta Apasoa, Herb Glassman. And we remember with love Carol Hepper. We remember the yard sites of Maurice Attia, father of Gilles Attia, Dorothy Block, grandmother of Arica Mills, Jerry Block, father of Arica Mills, Hanchin Cohen, grandmother of Jean Rubin, Jack Ezralou, father of Bernie Ezralou, Morris Nathan Hazlitt, son of Jean Hazlitt, Neil Nitel, father of Jamie Nitel, Max Colvin, father of Dale Shaw, Edward McCandless, father of Zoe Grossman, Ray E.K. Nalangan, father of Ray Nalangan, Lena and Dick Dorsey, Chris's parents, Joan Frances Polis, mother of Mike Polis, Irene Spivak, mother of Howard Spivak, Richard Van Frank, sibling-in-law of Holly Ilfeld. If there are any other names, please put them in the chat. Zichronam Livracha, may all their memories be for a blessing. As we stand, if we're able to say the Kaddish together, please unmute so we can hear each other's voices. Yitkadal v'yitkadash shema
Rotei v'yabik malchutei v'ayachom v'ayei techol be'Yisrael
Amen.
Tehesh me'Yisrael
Yitbarach Bidbar Bitbanan Bidadar Bidalei Bidalal Shmei Bidbar Tushbachata B'necha Matatan
Maya v'chaim v'yakol
וכל ישראל
Yisrael
אמן.
ותעשה שלום
ושלום
במרומיו
עליו
ולא
ויעשה למעלה ויעקב ישראל ויעקב
אמן.
אמן. אמן ויעקב ישראל.
Thank you, everyone. Please be seated if you're able. And we'll go on mute, although I wish that we could all sing this song together. The melody is very simple.
Look what we got. Oh.
Rabbi, you're on mute.
We are gentle, angry people, and we are singing, singing for our lives. We are gentle, angry people, and we are singing, singing for our lives. We are justice-seeking people, and we are singing, singing for our lives. We are justice-seeking people, and we are singing, singing for our lives. We are young and old together, and we are singing, singing for our lives. We are young and old together, and we are singing, singing for our lives. We are a land of many colors, and we are singing, singing for our lives. We are a land of many colors, and we are singing, singing for our lives. I can't get all the words in, but you know, I mean all of them. We are gay, straight, non-binary together, and we are singing, singing for our lives. We are gay, straight, non-binary together, and we are singing, singing for our lives. We are a gentle, loving people, and we are singing, singing for our lives. We are a gentle, loving people, and we are singing, singing for our lives. So, dear wonderful Roy, would you please lead us in Kiddush? And you can even put yourself on. There you are. But you're muted.
There we go.
There you go.
Too many places to have to click.
I know, you're doing such a great job.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, borei pari hagafen.
Amen.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'ratzavanu, v'shabbat kadsho b'ahava uvratzon hinchilanu, zikaron l'maseh v'reshit, Hu Yom Tehillah LaMikra'e Kodesh Zecher L'Tziat Mitzrayim Ivanu V'Acharta V'Yotanu Kidashta Mikol Hamim V'Shabbat Kadshecha V'Ahavav Uvratzon Inchaltanu Baruch atah Adonai Mekadesh Shabbat.
Amen. L'chaim, and thank you so much, Roy. And thank you, Hank and Bob. Thank you so much. And Derek and Seven. I wish we could all have dinner together, or we share my challah. It's so much nicer when we share. But if we could go on gallery for a moment, so we could just smile at each other and Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hamotzi lecha min haaretz. Amen. Shabbat shalom, everybody. Bob, do you want to take us somewhere with this, with more, if anyone wants to stay on, or we will certainly.
Sure.
Okay.
We certainly have the link. So if anybody has thought of a question or a comment that they'd like to ask Derek or Seven, they're more than willing to chat for a few minutes here.
And if you're ready to sign off and say Shabbat Shalom, hugs and kisses to all of you. Shabbat Shalom.
And unmuting.
Shabbat shalom.
Shalom.
Thank you.
Shalom.
Thank you for sharing.
Okay.
Shabbat shalom. Thank you, Seven and Derek. Love you.
Thank you so much. That was,
See
you guys
soon.
were awesome.
Yeah. Okay. Any questions or other comments that anyone has?
Hey, Bob, this is Hank. I'd love to ask Seven and Derek a question related to the workforce. How accepting are the businesses that you may be working for? Maybe you own your own businesses because of things. And have you found that you've had to maybe make more moves or changes during your time because of gender identity?
I mean, I have. I've never been out as transgender at any place that I've worked. I mean, my last job, they kind of my boss went ahead and she told everybody ahead of time that I was transgender because I guess they think that they have to walk on eggshells around me because of that. Like they told like, oh, Seven, she is transgender, so don't bring up anything sensitive because she'll sue us.
Oh.
So that's kind of rough. So I haven't been out anywhere since.
I'm naturally confrontational. So I'm out. I've been out at all of my jobs because I think it's important that because I'm comfortable with myself and I pass well as a cis guy to use that privilege to educate others and to help others who aren't comfortable being out. And my company. I've been with them for almost 4 years. I do ABA therapy, so I work with kids on the spectrum. They're super, super nice about it. I started there before I had my name legally changed. But because we provide medical services, you have to have your legal name on documents. My name has been changed for a couple years now, but at first it was really hard. So they went in and they like manually changed everything to Derek so that they wouldn't be outing me to families.
That's really nice.
My company is super supportive. They have they send out things for all different holidays and just movements. So I'm very lucky.
Thanks for sharing. I appreciate that.
Yeah, don't be shy. Like any question that you ask, I'm not going to think that it's inappropriate. That's what we're here for.
Okay, I have a question, and I feel embarrassed to ask it, but is there a difference between being queer or gay? Or yeah.
Not a dumb question. That's
Yeah.
a great question.
I don't know that. I don't know the answer to that question. Is the whole thing.
I know the answer. So if we're breaking down, so the term gay tends to, and this is just big picture, tends to imply that it's a man who is attracted to other men. Whereas queer is an umbrella term that gay falls under. So if you think about it, in the aspect of Judaism. Judaism is a big umbrella, and there's different branches, and there's different kinds. It's the same. So you have your queer umbrella, and under there you can be gay, you can be lesbian, you can identify as queer.
Ah.
You don't particularly stick to any labels around, oh, I'm bisexual, I'm pansexual. It's just an overall identity, and typically people who have more than one identity in the LGBT community identify as queer.
Yeah, I've noticed that too. I've noticed that people who maybe they could say, well, I am homosexual, but but maybe their romantic attraction is different than their sexual attraction or whatever that is. I have noticed that more people with different identities under that umbrella will just identify as queer because that
so much easier.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the song could have been, Holly Near's song could have been, we are, well, I don't know how to, there's a lot of things, but queer would be the better word.
I think it depends. I mean, because
because that's kind of the umbrella.
Yeah. And it's kind of an empowering way to say, hey, this has been used against us, but I'm going to call myself that because that's what gives me power and strength.
Great. Thank you. Thank you.
When I was growing up, queer was really a pejorative name. I mean, so it's changed to like be adopted by the movement in a sense.
Yeah, and I know there are some people within the community that don't really like the word queer and that choose not to use that. Well, I would say, I mean, I do respect that. Like, that's definitely, I think that's like a very valid thing of like, okay, well, especially if they are older and that has been a word that's been used against them. I totally understand that. And I think it's sometimes it's more younger people that identify as queer.
Yeah, it's definitely a lot of younger people.
Yeah.
The newer generations, like, and even though it's kind of an older slur, like I've been called queer, and it's like, yeah, I am, and that's not a problem. It's okay. It's just one of those things,
So I think it's very person to person. But that being said, it is still pretty common to use that. Yeah.
Holly.
Yeah.
And a number of things that we have watched lately. There was a lot of prejudice by the gay community against the transgender community. Is that still going on, or is this just, we're watching something from the 80s, we're watching,
Yeah, it's still a really big issue that people are really trying to shine a light on because in every community there's always cliques,
Right, yeah.
and not to overgeneralize, but the gay community tends to be very cliquey, and very unaccepting because they're like, oh well, I'm a gay man and I only like men,
Right, yeah.
implying that trans men aren't men.
Yeah.
But you can just say that you have, as I'm sorry, it's uncomfortable. You can just say that you have a general preference. That's okay.
Yeah, I would say I've noticed that too. I think since we have started dating each other and we are we are part of the gay community, I've noticed more discrimination of people who think that trans people aren't
Enter your access code followed by the pound sign.
community or that we don't belong in those spaces. And I'll say there's definitely way more people that are okay with it and yeah, you can
For Spanish, press 1. For
identify as gay. But I definitely have seen people that aren't very accepting who are in the gay community. Yeah. There's actually a really big thing going on.
ID number 218.
People who
What about the whole issue of sports and people saying that transgender men shouldn't, or no, transgender women shouldn't be allowed to participate in women's sports, and that's sort of like a way to be against everything.
Right.
It's so ridiculous. They think that's this unfair advantage. But in all reality, when you take estrogen, it makes you physically weaker.
Yeah.
Like you are not very strong anymore. I have plenty of friends who take estrogen and just the before and after, even like pictures, you can see like
The musculature kind of, yeah.
it's so frail and
Yeah. I think it doesn't make as big of a difference as people like to think. I would say just because there are so many people who are hormonally intersex, I would say there's a lot of cis women who do have a very high, like elevated level of testosterone. I mean, you can even get that just from working out. You can get an elevated level, or from eating some sorts of nuts, you can get a higher level of testosterone. But I think it also goes in reverse to where if you're going to make this big fuss about trans women not competing in women's sports, I would say it is more unfair to make trans men compete in women's sports because trans men are taking testosterone a lot of the times. And so then you actually do have those advantages. Sorry, I was trying to think of the words. I mean, it's roughly equivalent to anabolic steroids. So I would say that would be a little bit more unfair.
yeah.
Yeah.
If I can just speak to that point for a moment, my cousin is an attorney general, an assistant attorney general in the state of Maryland, and he works on Title IX and a lot of these different things. I had a recent conversation with him because Florida did just pass this ban on transgender women participating in women's sports. And he says there is no evidence of there being a competitive advantage. He says, we're tracking it around the country. The women aren't losing the races or the sport, the championship to transgender women. So it's really just a lot of talk about something that should, go away.
I agree. I think it's a moral panic that people are just kind of latching onto because it's something that people can point to and say, well, this is unfair. But I think you're absolutely right. Like, there's not evidence that shows that it's really a problem.
Right? It's one of those things where socially trans women in particular have a harder time transitioning.
Oh yeah.
Because people are afraid of being deceived. It's like, oh
Yeah.
well, I couldn't tell that you had that in between your legs. And it's like,
Right.
well, you don't need to know.
Yeah.
And that fear of being gay and have
Right.
just causes people to panic, and they try to just separate everybody because of it.
Right. Yeah.
Moral
well, thank you.
panic, I hadn't heard that term before. Is that a relatively new one, or am I just so old and in the dark? But I love that term. It's striking.
Yeah, I've been thinking a lot about moral panics. I do think it's newer because I hear it in reference to in the 80s when a lot of people were really concerned about like satanic ritual abuse. Like I've heard that referred to as like a moral panic. And then since then we have other moral panics. Like we have moral panics about the rate of sex trafficking in the country is, I mean, not to say that it is an issue, it's definitely a big thing that should be addressed, but the actual rates of it are lower than what people generally assume and generally think. And I've heard that referred to as a moral panic as well, of people, yeah. I think it is a more new term, yeah.
Okay, well, thank you. We love you both and look forward to being back in person and having more discussions just at ONEGS, and I think it'll be great.
Thank
And
you so much, guys.
maybe Derek, you could cook for us a little bit before you go to show us. We can do it before and after. A year after you get done at the school, you'll come back.
Yes, there we go.
That's great.
Bob's niece is
I told him, yeah, she's
going-
going back there.
this year.
Yeah.
So you'll meet her.
Yep. Okay, well, thank you all for participating.
Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat
Shalom,
shalom,
everybody.
everyone.
Thank you so much. Beautiful
Thank you.
service. Thank you, everybody.
Bye
Thank
now.
you.
Bye.
See you both later.